Over 9,000 people died here. Some were buried in mass graves, others were never identified. And if you ask the people who've been inside, not all of them stayed dead. This is Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, perched on a hill in country Victoria, Australia, forgotten by time, but not by the dead. For over a century, this place was a dumping ground for the unwanted, children with disabilities, women who read too much, soldiers who came home different. Once you were locked inside, you didn't get out. And if you died here, you were lucky to be remembered at all. And now, not long after the last patients left, people still hear the screaming. So the question is, are they echoes of the past, or is something still trapped inside? From 1867 to 1995, Beechworth wasn't silent. It was filled with screams, sobs, and the kind of eerie stillness that only comes after a soul gives up. It was once a state-of-the-art facility, but quickly became one of the most infamous asylums in Australian history. Some say that the people who died here never actually left. Behind its iron gates were stories of broken minds, brutal treatments, and desperate souls who were never meant to leave. This is what happened behind the barred windows, where people were locked away for being different, and the cure was often worse than the disease. Because while the doors may be closed now, Beechworth's past is very much alive. When Beechworth Asylum first opened its doors in 1867, it wasn't considered a place of torture. Quite the opposite. It was a state-of-the-art facility, 1,200 beds, over 500 staff. The architects had even chosen the site for its healing altitude, convinced that the fresh mountain air would blow madness away like dust. But behind the polite language and peaceful views was a system built on fear, ignorance, and control. And the rules? Well, there weren't any rules. To be admitted, all it took was 2 signatures. That's it. A spouse, a neighbor, a cop. If 2 people claimed you were mentally unwell, even just melancholic or excitable, you were gone. And once you were inside, getting out took 8 signatures. Well, that's right, getting out took 8 different people vouching that you were sane. And in a place like this, who was left to do that? Before the Victorian era, mental health was such a taboo subject. Even the slightest sign of a mental health condition meant you could be thrown into a madhouse and left there indefinitely. People were sent there for epilepsy, for ADHD, for autism, though that word didn't exist yet. One woman was reportedly institutionalized for novel reading, another for being overeducated. Husbands could commit their wives for being disobedient. Immigrants who didn't speak English were sent in for confused behavior. Children with disabilities. Soldiers with PTSD. Anyone who society didn't know what to do with. You didn't have to be insane to end up at Beechworth, but if you stayed long enough, you probably would go insane. Patients were locked away in small cells, usually freezing, dirty, diseased, starved, and without medical care. No visitors and often isolated. It would have been a horrendous way to live your days. In the 19th century, the facility's conditions improved, but the treatment worsened. Doctors and staff could now experiment on patients. But what they considered experiments, we today would call torture. What followed were treatments so brutal they haunt the asylum's history to this day. Before the 20th century, mental health treatment was basically a game of, what if we try this? Imagine being dragged into a tiled room and tied down, not because you were dangerous, but because that's just how they treated everyone. Shackled wrists, iron chains on the ankles, cold baths, limbs bound, and a sheet so tight over your face you could barely breathe. All while you were held under freezing cold water until you stopped screaming. Another treatment method was to spray patients with high-pressure cold water. Other popular therapies were based on humoral theory, the belief that a person's internal fluids were dangerously out of balance. To fix it, they would blister, vomit, or bleed them, convinced that they were purging the body of disease. Blistering involved placing a chemical on the patient's skin that caused massive burns and blisters. As these wounds healed, it was believed that the illness would be drawn out. Vomiting involved being tied up in a straitjacket on a swing chair, swung in circles until you became sick and lost consciousness. The belief: the patient would vomit up all the illness, then bloodletting, precisely what you imagine. Or perhaps even worse, the doctors would cut you open and drain large amounts of blood until you passed out. But it didn't stop there. In some instances, they believed mental health issues were caused by infected organs. The cure? Remove them. Of course, some patients had their stomachs removed. Others had parts of their intestines, appendices, or anything they thought could be removed. This obviously did not fix anything, and the majority of patients died during surgery or shortly afterwards. However, their death certificates wouldn't disclose that surgery was the cause. Are you schizophrenic? Don't worry, you'd be injected with malaria as doctors believed that a high fever would kill the illness. You're still not cured? Welcome to shock therapy. Not the kind that we think of today. No, this was crude and barbaric. First came the insulin shock therapy. Patients were injected with massive doses of insulin until they fell into a coma. Then they would be revived hours later, and the doctors would hope maybe this time, maybe the mental illness would stay gone. But surprise, it didn't. So they did it again and again until the patient died or forgot who they were entirely. When that didn't work, they escalated to electroconvulsive therapy, where actual electricity jolted through your brain to induce a seizure. Most people woke up terrified, disoriented, or injured. Some didn't wake up at all. And then there were the lobotomies. Using a tool that looked eerily similar to an ice pick, doctors would lift the patient's eyelid, hammer the spike into the thin bone above the eye, and stir. The goal was to sever the frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for decision-making, emotions, and personality. The belief was that by severing emotional pathways, you could reset a broken mind. The result? A docile, empty shell. Some patients never ever moved again. Others just stared, unblinking, for years to come. They were referred to as zombies. Today, Beechworth is a tourist site, but not for the architecture. People come for the ghosts. Thousands died here, many under horrific circumstances, but there are a few spirits that visitors and staff report again and again. Matron Sharp is one of them. Unlike many of the cold, brutal staff members, Matron Sharp was known for her kindness. She brought flowers for the wards. She whispered gentle words to patients before procedures. She was so devoted that she left her own children in care so she could work full-time in the asylum. Her ghost was seen even before the place shut down. Nurses claimed they saw her sitting beside patients, waiting for electroshock therapies, holding their hands when no one else would. She's still seen today, usually standing in doorways, watching quietly. Then there's William Billy Whiteley. He was a prisoner transferred from a nearby jail, the first person to undergo surgery at Beechworth. He didn't survive. The official cause of death was insanity, but most agree he died from post-op complications. What's particularly disturbing is what happened after. Billy's organs were removed, preserved in jars of formaldehyde, and then placed on shelves as if he were a science experiment. The jars are gone now, stored in the original cellar. Visitors claim to hear growls and feel strange sensations. Cold hands on their skin, a breath against their neck, especially in the old laboratory where Billy died. But Billy wasn't the only one who left something behind. Tommy Kennedy is another spirit who refuses to leave. He worked in the kitchen and also served as a dab hand, someone tasked with moving the bodies of the deceased out of the hospital. Tommy died mysteriously. No death was ever recorded, but he's still in the kitchen. People report being poked in the ribs, having their shirts tugged, or hearing faint whistling when the room is empty. Then there's the recreation hall, the one place patients were allowed to sing, dance, or just be human for once. Now it's home to two spirits. One is a little girl. Tourists, especially women, say that they hear whispers in their ears, faint, unintelligible words. Some have spotted her in the corner of photos, unnoticed at first. The other is a tall, older man. He doesn't interact, he watches. Guests say they feel him just behind them. Sometimes he's in the mirror, and sometimes he's gone when they turn around. One former guide swore he saw a door slam shut on a floor with no working doors. One of the eeriest parts of the asylum was the door, the one they used to restrain patients for punishment. Imagine this, you're dragged to a plain wooden door in the hallway, your arms strapped behind you, and then click, you're chained upright to the door like a crucifix. You stand there for hours, maybe overnight. No one speaks to you, no one feeds you, you're not even sure what you did wrong. Visitors today claim they could still hear the faint sobbing near the hallway. Others say they feel a crushing weight on their chest, like they're being punished just for walking by. And here's the kicker, there are no official records of how many people were restrained there, only rumors. But what we do know is this. Over 9,000 people entered Beechworth and never came out. Some were buried in unmarked graves nearby, others were forgotten entirely. Is Beechworth Asylum truly haunted? That depends on what you believe. But there's no question that something still lingers there, whether it's the residual trauma of what was done or the restless spirits of the patients who were never allowed to leave. So next time you see yourself driving through Victoria and see a hilltop estate in the distance, maybe don't stop, or if you do, don't go in alone. Because at Beechworth, the doors may be locked, but the spirits are not. Would you spend a night at Beechworth? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more real stories that you won't find anywhere else, subscribe and join me next time. Thanks for watching and stay curious.